Have you ever thought about how a country can possibly run without a single official rulebook? Well, that's the big puzzle of the United Kingdom's constitution. It's not written down in one tidy document. Instead, it's been pieced together over hundreds of years. So how does it all actually work? Let's dive in and try to unravel this thing. All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start with that mystery of the missing rulebook. Then we'll break down the three main pillars of power. After that, we'll get into the really interesting stuff, the rules that aren't actually laws. We'll also see how power is shared across the UK. And finally, we'll look at why this constitution is always changing.
So first things first, let's tackle the single most unusual thing about the UK's entire system, that missing rulebook.
I mean, think about that for a second. It's a wild idea, right? Most countries have one big formal document you can point to and say, that's our constitution. But the UK just doesn't. Its core principles weren't decided on in one go. They've grown and changed over centuries.
And the difference is huge. On one hand, you've got what's called a codified constitution, like in the US, where everything is laid out in one formal text. And on the other hand, you have the UK's uncodified system, which is more like a collection of different laws, court decisions, and old traditions all bundled together.
But let's be super clear. Just because it's not in one book doesn't mean it's not a real constitution. A famous legal expert put it perfectly. It's simply the set of rules that decides how power is shared and used in the country. The only real difference is that it wasn't created all at once.
Okay, so how is all this power actually organized? Well, the whole architecture of the British state basically rests on three main pillars. First up, you have the legislature. Think of this as the lawmaking factory. In the UK, that's Parliament.
Then there's the executive. This is the government. The Prime Minister, the Cabinet, the people who actually take the laws and put them into action to run the country day to day.
And the third pillar is the judiciary. These are the courts and judges. Their job is to interpret the laws and check that the executive is acting legally.
So if we put it all together, it looks like this. Parliament makes the law, the government implements it, and the courts interpret it. This is that classic separation of powers you might have heard of, but as we're about to see, it has a very unique British twist.
Right, so if it's not all written down in formal laws, what's the invisible glue holding these pillars together? This is where things get really fascinating.
The rules come from three main places. You've got actual legislation, laws passed by Parliament. You've got case law, which are decisions made by judges. But the third source is the really strange one. Constitutional conventions. These are powerful, unwritten rules that everyone is just expected to follow.
The best way to think about these conventions is like the gentlemen's agreements of government. They're informal, unwritten understandings about how people should behave politically. They kind of fill in the gaps that the formal laws don't cover. Even the government's own official handbook describes them perfectly. They're binding in operation, but not in law. So what does that actually mean? It means there's no legal punishment for breaking one, but the political fallout could be absolutely massive.
And we're not talking about small things here. Some of these conventions are foundational to how the country works. For instance, in theory, the king could refuse to sign a bill passed by Parliament, but by convention, that just never happens. Or the king has to appoint the person who can lead the House of Commons as Prime Minister, not just whoever they like. These unwritten rules are, honestly, the bedrock of the UK's democracy.
Now, this flexible blueprint doesn't just apply to the central government in London, it's also designed to extend power outwards to the different nations that make up the United Kingdom.
This whole process is called devolution. What it means is that the main UK Parliament has handed over or devolved certain powers to the Scottish Parliament, the Welsh Senedd, and the Northern Ireland Assembly, so they can make their own laws on certain issues.
So the powers are basically split into two buckets. You have reserved matters, like national defense or immigration, that are handled by the UK Parliament for everyone. And then you have devolved matters, like, say, education in Scotland or health in Wales, which are managed by their own local governments. The idea is to bring decision-making closer to the people.
And get this, here's another one of those crucial conventions in action. The Sewer Convention says that the UK Parliament won't normally make laws about devolved topics without getting permission first. But, and this is key, the Supreme Court has confirmed this is just a political understanding, not a legally binding rule. It perfectly shows that constant dance between law and convention.
And all of this brings us to a really crucial point. The UK's constitution isn't some finished monument, set in stone. It's much more like a living building that's constantly being renovated and added to.
You can see this evolution stretching back for centuries. I mean, it goes all the way back to the Magna Carta in 1215, which first put limits on the king's power. Then you have the Bill of Rights in 1689 that cemented Parliament's authority. And just recently, you had the Human Rights Act in 1998 and the creation of the Supreme Court in 2005. Every step changes the building.
And this really is the main argument for this kind of system. Because it's not all written down, the Constitution can adapt to new challenges and changing values organically, without the super rigid and often difficult amendment process you see in other countries.
So, that leaves us with the big question, right? Is this flexible, unwritten system a brilliant model that's fit for the modern world, or is it an old-fashioned setup that creates too much uncertainty,